You know, all the time here on UFC Fight Pass, we talk about the future stars of tomorrow proving themselves today. But I think we have to flip the script a little bit when talking about my next guest, Modestas Bukauskas, because you had a UFC run. It didn't go the way you wanted it to, and it ended pretty badly, a horrific injury. I mean, people have been talking about oblique kicks and whether or not they should be legal or illegal. I think they look at that fight for an argument to why they should be illegal. But you didn't let that stop you. You go to Cage Warriors, you pick up a light heavyweight title, you get back in the octagon, and now you're on a 3-fight win streak. You've won 5 of your last 6. And we'll talk about the controversy in a moment, but I think your story, Modestas, is incredibly inspiring in many ways because it's easier, I think, now more than ever to get to the UFC, but it is harder to get there, come up short, and then get back and find yourself in the mix, especially after a crazy injury. What has the last couple years been like for yourself here in this mixed martial arts career?
It's been a mad roller coaster, mate. Honestly, I feel like there was so many different factors as to sort of why or what helped motivate me to sort of, like I say, just keep going, keep striving to be the best I can. I just, like I say, imagine how the story would have gone if it would have just been, Modestas, Cage Warriors champ, went to the UFC, had injury, got cut, done. Story's over. Do you know what I mean? Like, how crap of a story would that have been? You know, and that's ultimately what I was just thinking, just sort of sitting there. I was like, we can't let it end here. Do you know what I mean? There's more to be written. There's more left in the tank for me to do. You know what I mean? And I was still very young as well. It's not like I was like, at the back end of my career and like, it's kind of going to be very hard to pull myself back. Only 27 years old. I just then turned 28 into that year where I won the Cage Warriors belt again. And it's been a massive learning process. It's been a lot of self-discovery in a lot of ways. It's been a lot of changing things sort of in my training, in my preparations, in my mindset. It's like I say, it's been an absolute. I can't describe it in any other way than it's been a roller coaster. It's been up, down, left, right, here, there, and absolutely everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Even when I got back to the UFC, I had those 2 wins straight. Then I had the loss. Then I had to change things. Then I met Tom. And now I'm on a 3-fight win streak after going up to his camp and stuff like that. And that was been one of the best things that has happened to me, is going up to train with Tom and his team. And now I feel like I've sort of found my own. And there's still even like I say, after my last performance, there's still things that I need to sort of do and still improve and keep learning. So it's just been a massive learning process, but I'm happy that I've gone through all those situations because it shaped me to be who I am today. So I'm forever grateful for those bad times.
You talk about the process, and I think that's something that you just have to trust in, whether it goes your way or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. This is a long road. You know that better than anybody. Talk about Tom a little bit because I don't know if there's a more exciting fighter right now in MMA. I mean, people like literally we had a bunch of fights announced. Dana gets on Instagram and does his thing. Ilia Topuria is fighting Charles Oliveira. And all I hear and see in the comments is, yeah, but what about Tom Aspinall? What
Mm-hmm.
about Tom Aspinall? They want it. It's got to be a great time to be around Tom because he's one of the brightest stars right now in the sport.
Mate, it's honestly, I look up to that guy so much. He's a massive inspiration. Seeing him in the gym, with all of this sort of cloud and mist over whether he's going to be fighting or when is he going to be fighting or what's going on, and he's still a consummate professional in the gym all the time. Always getting better, still on the diet, obviously doing all like his dad's stuff that he needs to do, and then coming back into the gym and working his ass off and trying to just improve and level up all the time. Like I get so inspired and I literally get motivated myself to try and take a page out of his book and being around greatness. Do you know what I mean? It kind of rubs off on everyone else that's in the room, and it's just amazing to see. And it shows me the type of person that I would want to be, or the type of person I would want to be as a champion as well. Do you know what I mean? So I see him as a role model. And just being around that guy, and just like joking around with him and his dad, and just being in that room, it can only make you get better. And like I say, I know Tom's going to go and do amazing things. And I really hope they put that fight together because he's one dangerous dude.
Yeah, I think Jon Jones, for all of his faults in his career, maybe in his personal life, um, you can't look past what he's done as a fighter. People can argue that he's not the greatest of all time for things that have nothing to do with fighting, but I think we're getting dangerously close to a point where people are going to start to question that GOAT status unless he fights Tom Aspinall. And that's interesting because it's a fight that potentially doesn't ever happen, but it would be a very unfortunate thing for Jon Jones if he doesn't take that fight, because that's the thing everyone wants, and that's the thing everyone's going to remember if he doesn't.
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, of course, he's done so many amazing things. Like, he hasn't really lost at light heavyweight. That one fight against Matt Hamill. I mean, pretty much we can even scratch that one off because he was winning that fight. Do you know what I'm saying? So like he's done so many amazing, great things in his career. But that's sort of in the past, and it's all about what you're doing right now. Do you know what I'm saying? Uh, Ultimately, he's the belt holder, and Tom's interim champ. That has to be the fight that is made. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, this is, if you're talking about legacy as well, it's like you got to talk about that. Okay, now you're the old guy or the older guy that's got to fight the young, hungry, up and coming guy the same way it was for him when he was coming up in his career. Now he's got to give Tom that chance. Do you get what I'm saying? He's done so many things that are amazing at light heavyweight, but now he's got to solidify himself at heavyweight, which is a new weight class. And the
Right.
only way you're going to do that is by fighting Tom. So you got to give that opportunity because everyone wants to find out. Everyone wants to know, what's going to happen, because this is the most dangerous guy that Jon has fought throughout his whole career, 100%.
Yeah.
I stand by that. I've seen the way that this guy moves in the gym. Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how everything pans out, and I really hope that it does happen and come to fruition.
Yeah, looking at all of Jon's fights, I was very intrigued and excited for his fight with Alexander Gustafsson the second time. Turns out it was a blowout. But since then, I mean, he's been in competitive fights, but since then, I've never been so excited for a potential matchup for Jon Jones than this fight. So we're here
Yeah.
to talk about you, though, Modestas. We got you a decision up in Montreal back at 315 last weekend. I want to talk about the style matchup a little bit because Iwan Coutilaba is a intense individual, shall we say. And I assume that you were focused on that in putting together a game plan and a strategy. What is it like fighting someone who is so intense long before the fight even starts? Was it something you had to mentally prepare for?
Oh, 100%. You can't, because I'm normally used to fighting sort of. It's funny because Ion Cutelaba, he's still very respectful. Like, even before the fight, we still shook hands and stuff like this. He's just very intense and very crazy when it comes to the fight itself. So I basically just come to the terms and understood that that's just part of it. That's part of the whole fighting. That's part of hyping up the fight. That's part of him getting into his own psyche. Do you know what I'm saying? It's nothing that should be seen as something that will make me like sort of shy away, but that's just the way that he likes to get into his zone, and I completely just sort of understood that and accepted that going into that fight. So it made me more accepting of all of the antics, all the things that he was potentially going to do, and even the whole thing coming across the cage and doing this. It's all part of his thing. It's what he needs to get himself pumped up for the fight, and that's like everyone. So the way I looked at it is that you almost try and humanize them. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what, maybe that's something that I need to do but I just don't. Do you know what I mean? But he does. So cool, let him do that. Ultimately, we're still going to have to get into the middle of the cage and throw down with each other. And I was preparing myself for the fact that he could come out very aggressive, because that's what he likes to do. Do you know what I mean? He likes to throw big, massive overhands, and if you sleep, you're going to get caught with one of those big shots. And as we've seen, especially in his last two fights, he's dropped guys with that double 1-2 straight down the pipe. So you can't go reckless, and the funny thing is you can't as well get into a pocket, into like a massive exchange with this guy, because again, that's what he wants. He wants to take you into that chaotic environment. So, and as well, so that he can dip in underneath for a takedown. So he fought a little bit differently in terms of when he fought me, throwing out more kicks, especially more leg kicks. My leg's definitely feeling it. But all in all, I was prepared for what he was going to do, and sort of I strategized accordingly.
Yeah, let's talk about the decision. We don't get this often in MMA, dissenting 30-27s. It's just not, we shouldn't get it. At least that's the theory. We shouldn't get it. Full disclosure, watching the fight, I thought that it was a poor decision. I thought it was a wrong decision. I went back and looked at the fight metric numbers, Modestas, and I was actually blown away. Have you seen the stats from this fight?
Yeah, to be honest, when I looked at it, I didn't really understand it, to be fair. I didn't understand how it was so lopsided, personally, because, like I say, I felt like I landed quite a lot of clean, sharp shots, so I didn't understand why the numbers were just so vastly different.
Well,
So
I have a theory, if you wouldn't mind humoring me a little bit. You talked about it. He's an aggressive fighter. He threw more than you, technically landed more significant strikes than you, but his percentage and efficiency rating was lower than yours. This is a sport that oftentimes informs fans and sometimes judges that fighter A is winning because he's more active, but it's about quality over quantity. Do you feel like, despite, I mean, like the numbers here, overall significant strikes in the fight, you landed 44 of 92 for a 47% accuracy. He landed 58 of 130 for a 44% accuracy. I know numbers don't win fights. It's based on effective damage and things like that. But I think the people that scored this fight for you, I think they saw you have a more technically proficient game where he was throwing a lot, throwing big shots and coming up on the shorter end and missing more often than not.
yeah, and I definitely felt that even when I was in the fight, I was able to make him miss a lot more. Maybe some more of those significant strikes were coming from the low kicks, or maybe in the clinch, like the little shot, these shots that were in the clinch. Maybe that added up to tally up to his numbers as well. But I mean, I even asked one of my friends to sort of make it, and even just watching it back myself, like I say, with commentary, without commentary. If you look at a lot of the exchanges with the hands, a lot of the times it ended up me coming out on top with those exchanges, and it ended up being like the sort of the cleaner, crisper shots that were landing. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of times then he would end up missing. And yeah, obviously, he landed his shots here and there. He landed some of his leg kicks and stuff like this. But I felt like the more sort of impactful strikes, especially if you look at his face in comparison to mine at the end of the fight, I felt like I was landing more of those impactful strikes. And that's why even when I was standing there waiting for the decision, I felt like, I knew it was a very close fight. Like I said, I knew, but some of the scorecards were complete crazy. But I definitely felt 29-28, it would definitely split decision should go to me. Like I said, because I felt like I was landing more of those impactful strikes. Because I even felt it when I was in there. Do you know what I mean? When the crowd's going and then I'm landing that last cross at the end, or like landing a combination and finishing off with a good shot. Do you know what I mean? I felt like it was always in those exchanges, I was coming out the bet on the better side of it. Yeah, he's landed a shot or two. Like obviously you can see, yeah,
Right.
he's landed his shots, but in all fairness, I felt like I landed more of those shots. And yeah, maybe I didn't throw so much volume, but in terms of accuracy, mine was a lot better. Yeah.
So you mentioned the commentary, and again, watching it live, I thought Cutelaba did enough to get his hand raised. Watching it again, I thought you won the fight. I turned the commentary off. Looking at the commentary, I mean, they're in the moment. It's a hard job. I do it on the regular, but you're just saying what you see. And I think real time analysis when you're talking, it's a hard job. What was your thoughts on the commentary and what they were saying?
Yeah, I mean, like for him to for them to say oh, massive robbery and this and that, I felt like I was a little bit sort of out of line maybe. Ultimately, like you said, it's like when they're in the moment, they're thinking certain things, and they're possibly looking at particular things, and they're just saying how they feel at that particular time, and this and that. Look, they're saying what they see, and they're obviously very credible, like all of those guys. I mean, like former champions and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So obviously, they know what they're talking about. But yeah, I felt like there could have been more said about when I was doing stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There could have been more said whenever I was landing more impactful strikes, or I was doing more stuff, instead of it kind of swaying to one side. I think the thing that they were probably having more of an issue with was the vault, and then that was probably why it was swaying their thought process to that side, was because they felt like, oh well, because he's not throwing as much. But then if you listen to the commentary when I was landing, it's like, oh, that was a big shot and this and that. It's like, well, do you know what I mean? Like maybe focus more on that side as opposed to. But look, I take that as a learning process, because okay, maybe now it means that I have to try and throw more volume along with the impactful strike, and that's okay. I'll go back to the drawing board and I'll fix that. But yeah, I felt like it was a little bit harsh maybe
Sure.
towards me, but it is what it is,
Dean Thomas talked about how you were being more of a technician, and he thought, watching it live, that you were maybe letting the fight get away from you. And I think that has to go back to that volume. But when I look at the total fight numbers, the only one that he outscored you on in totals was control time, which was only separated by like a minute, and it wasn't really super quality control time. I think that the decision looks more uh, poor when you look at the 30-27 dissenting 30-27,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the narrative that this fight, no one deserved a 30-27. It's a
no,
29-28 scorecard no
yeah,
matter what. It's just whether or
yeah.
not they think you won or Iwan won. But that's the thing. I think the crowd and the environment plays a big factor in all of that. But if anybody is watching this interview and thinking that I'm crazy, I implore them to go back and watch the fight, because it's a lot different than it might have seemed real time. But bottom line is, you got your hand raised, your third win in a row, your fifth win back in the UFC since then. This win's not going anywhere. It's going to be on your record forever. Momentum on your side. How do you feel spinning it forward here on this second life in the UFC's octagon?
Yeah, I mean, like, to even think about, being 4-1 now in my second stint, completely sort of flipping it around on its head as to my first sort of experience. I'm still learning, as well. I look at this whole process. I've made a lot of changes. I've learned a hell of a lot about myself as an athlete, as a fighter. Do you know what? My skills have always been there, but now I'm facing different types of challenges. Like, especially going into this fight, for example, this is now the highest, like the highest ranked guy that I've fought, the most highest profile guy that I've fought. You're sort of leaning in towards the top 15 and stuff like that. There's a lot more pressure and stuff like this, and now it's having to adapt and adjust and have to deal with all of this kind of stuff. But it's like, do you know what? The skill set is there. Now it's just about being a bit more precise and meticulous, even with the strategy, so I can come out and think logically and then try and land more shots and stuff like this. So it's a constant learning process. But I feel like every time now when I'm fighting, I'm taking valuable lessons from each fight. Even with the wins and stuff like that, three in a row, every single fight, even like in my last fight where, for most people it looked like it went picture perfect, I still learned little things from that fight even. So every single fight, I feel like I'm taking a lot more from it. Maybe that comes from maturity, being a little bit older. Maybe in my first UFC run, I was just, that young kid, just like, oh my God, wow, this is the UFC. Like now it's like, I feel like I've made a home here. And I'm ready to, like I say, I'm ready to make a statement. It was a very close fight. This last one, I've had 3 big wins, 2 finishes, and I'm looking to just keep working my way up, keep taking those lessons, keep working with the best in the game, such as Tom and all of his team. And yeah, ultimately, I'm going to learn from this. And when I come out into my next performance, I'm going to do much better. So, that's the first like kind of guy who's like very, very high. I've had some high profile, but this was probably the most out of all of them. So I'm taking that all as massive lessons, and now we're gonna use that as fuel to bring out an even better performance for the next one.
Well, you've got one of the best stories going, I think. It's under the radar because, there's fights every week, but going what you've gone through and coming back and having a career resurgence in the best sort of way, like I said, it's inspiring. On the way out here, I want to talk about Cage Warriors for a moment, because you established yourself there, you reestablished yourself there after the injury. How important was Cage Warriors for you to be the UFC fighter that you are today?
Do you know what? It was, I'd say the biggest thing is that it definitely did get me prepared for the height of importance of the UFC and being like ready for everything, like ready for the media, ready for all the attention, ready for like sort of the bright lights and stuff like this. The level of competition was also very high when I fought there. Graham does an absolutely amazing job running that show. It's on UFC Fight Pass, like everyone around the world's watching it. They're talking about it as being one of the top European promotions and stuff like that. Conor McGregor's fought on there, Michael Bisping, Dan Hardy. You got like a whole host of like amazing athletes that have been there. So like just the lineage, wearing the famous yellow gloves, being in that canvas, being under like a lot of scrutiny from everyone as well, especially like in the European scene. You couldn't really get prepared, even like everything like backstage and having to do the medicals properly and stuff like this. Like everything was sort of gearing you towards getting yourself as prepared as possible to go into the UFC, and like I say, even when I won the belt for the second time, like just transitioning from that, going to the Tyson Pedro fight again, it was like a very natural progression, and that's what they're very good at. They're very good at helping prepare you. And you see amazing athletes now doing really well, like Ian Gary, for example. Tom as well has fought on there. You know, you got like a whole host of amazing guys that have been from that promotion. So it just gets you prepared with everything that you have to deal with on such a big stage, such as the UFC. Obviously, it's on a much larger scale in the UFC. However, it's getting you prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a different vibe, and that's one thing I think that's really important too. Is there are a lot of regional shows out there that just have an alphabet soup name,
Yeah.
something FC, and it's in a barn somewhere or it's in a small arena. But Cage Warriors, it's a party-like atmosphere. It's a big fight atmosphere, and some of the biggest fight stars are coming from that promotion and doing big things in the UFC. And maybe down the road, you'll be the next former Cage Warriors champion to fight your way into a UFC title opportunity.
Oh, 100%, mate. Like I say, that's always the goal, and yeah, I just envision it every day. We just keep learning, we just keep getting better, and ultimately we've got to go out here and entertain the fans. So that's what I intend to keep on doing.
Modestas, appreciate the time. Best of luck going forward, and hopefully we can catch up before your next fight in the octagon.
Sen, you're the man. Thank you so much. Been absolutely amazing talking to you, mate.